Ready to jump in?
We're ready to jump in.
Okay, I'm going to switch over to screen sharing, and then is it best to come full screen?
Probably.
Okay. Okay, so just for those who are joined by recording, this is Lyle Swim, PhD and expert in change. Did his whole dissertation on adaptation of change. So
yeah,
take it away, Lyle.
All right. So one of the questions, Mike, I wonder if you guys have faced this, but I know I have in building our doTERRA business. And the question is there really an opportunity there? Have the good spots already been taken? The good seats on the bus are already filled. And to me, the resounding answer to that is no. There is amazing quantum growth to be had, and frankly, just in the U.S. So I want to just talk a little bit about what that looks like. So today, just to kind of give you a picture, I like simple pictures. Today, we have about 2 million active wellness advocates, which are having an impact, on probably 10 million people around. And again, this is just the U.S., around 10 million people, which, you think about, that's pretty substantial in terms of the amount of Americans that are now beginning to have that doTERRA experience in their homes and impacting lives. That's great, but can we do better? And so the question for you as you push toward presidential is, are you ready for massive growth in your business? And again, where is that growth going to come from? So let me just share with you, this is really what I did my dissertation on. It's called the diffusion curve. So it really talks about how any kind of brand new idea goes from just those couple of weird people at the very beginning, like, hey, this might be a good idea, to everybody's doing it. So how do I go from Google being that interesting idea at the beginning to everybody, if I want to search the internet now, I don't say I search the internet, I Google it, right? So how does that happen? So let me just plug in some numbers and what that looks like. So the first 2% who say, hey, doTERRA is a great idea, we would call those innovators. The next group, it's about 15%, are early adopters. You've probably heard that term before. That's a pretty common one, especially in marketing. The next 34% are the early majority. The next 34% are the late majority, and the laggards are, essentially those who, they're, if they could have a Betamax VCR, they still would, but because there's none available, they can't watch their Betamax anymore. So this is really, any product that goes through this is kind of the wave that they go through and what they're going to experience. And so the natural question for me, as I thought about the doTERRA business opportunity, is where is doTERRA? And
why don't we open that up for conversation?
That's great. That's a great stop question. Where do you think we are in the curve?
I would say early adopter. This is Wendy.
Hey, Wendy.
Awesome.
Okay.
I would say we're still under innovators. This is Mickey.
Okay. All right. Well, it's good that none of you said laggard. That's probably a good thing, right? Yeah.
That's a great thing.
So as I look at it, based on some numbers that I'll share in just a minute, we are probably right about 13% of the market opportunity, about 10% actually, that we've tapped into. And there's something interesting that kind of happens that I'll get into at that 10% of how do we jump and move from the early adopter to the early majority. So just to kind of give you the sense, where did I come up with that number? In the US market, there's 146 million households. Based on what I can do from my research, there are about the market opportunity for doTERRA, it's about 20 million households. And currently we have 2 million active users. So that's about 10%. That number kind of ebbs and flows. People who've signed up who maybe aren't actively using, but so about 10% of the US market is captured and currently actively using doTERRA. And that has given us 650 diamonds and about 120 blue diamonds. So that's doTERRA 1.0. That's where we sit today. So you kind of talked about, we're in the innovator stage. At least in the US, I would say we're pretty well into the early adopter stage. So once you get to that 10%, 11% mark, the curve really starts to change. And it can go one of two directions. It can either kind of drop off or we can bridge the gap, because the early majority is a different kind of leader and it's a different kind of user. And so for us, at least, building to that quantum growth, how do we now build a bridge to that next 8 million households? And we'll kind of have a little, I want to just think about that. Andy, I think we'll lead a little conversation with you as we talk about that, but start to think about that. Where are those users? They're ones that are not going to be the people who just kind of get essential oils. It may not be their default response, but they're likely to use if we can get to them in the right way. And from a leadership standpoint, innovators and early adopters, they're good dealing with ambiguity. They're very entrepreneurial, and they're willing to take risks, but the early majority aren't necessarily the same. And yet that early majority are people who've probably been in corporate environments where they've led teams of 100, 200, 300. I think of a friend of mine who I did my doctorate with. He's led a team of 350 engineers with a budget of $300 million. So the leadership for him, he likes process, he likes systems, but he's not overwhelmed by the prospect of managing a huge presidential team. It just doesn't even faze him, so long as he has the right tools and kind of a set process. So he's not going to be an innovator, but he's a prime target, at least for me. How do I bridge the gap and get to him as we go forward? So just again, if I think now going from 2 to 10 million, that's 50 million people. And this isn't even the entire curve. This is just saying, let's go after that early majority. Where are they? And what's the business opportunity just for that group of people and that many lives that we can touch here in the US? So if we look at that kind of same chart, the doTERRA 1.0, down the bottom, 650 diamonds, 120 blue diamonds. If we think about the 2.0 quantum growth, we're really opening the door for 3,000 diamonds just in the US and 450 blue diamonds just in the US. Which means in terms of total open slots, there's 2,300 and 350 right now that are available. So there's a phenomenal growth opportunity, and there are plenty of seats on the bus for you to fill and helping you move to presidential, as well as lots of other open spots for presidentials. So with that kind of a background, maybe Andy, we can have jump in and we'll talk a little bit about that. But to achieve the massive growth, the discussion, I think for us today, first of all, maybe let's get a response to the numbers, and then maybe have a conversation, Andy, with, okay, what does that different kind of user look like, and how do we connect with and engage that different kind of leader?
Awesome. So what are your first impressions when you hear, one of you guessed that we're in the innovator stage, and you're definitely right that the innovators are those who have shown up so far in doTERRA. Each of you are the type of people who, you don't need a 10-year-old company for you to feel safe and commit your time and energy. You're enough of an innovator that you've seen the opportunity, you're willing to take that risk and jump in there. So we've definitely got innovators, in top positions in the company. But I think Lyle's right that we are in that early adopter stage.
In the U.S. We can talk a little bit about this later. The challenge that we have for you as leaders, especially if you're moving international, is you've got to keep your feet in both camps, right? So if I look at China or Brazil or some of these other areas that are opening up, they're way back at the 1%, maybe 2%. And yet, if I'm in the U.S. as well, I kind of have to spend my time in both camps. So exactly, we got kind of a unique leadership opportunity and challenge to take advantage of.
So as you look at these numbers and you hear these ideas on where doTERRA is in the U.S., what are your first impressions? What are your thoughts, questions?
No, sweetie.
Okay, this is Wendy.
Yeah.
My first thought is that I need to change. I need to change my mindset, because I am one of the early people who didn't need any I didn't need any coaxing. But now if I'm sharing with people who do, I can see that where I'm just like, forget it, I'm not working with these people because they don't get it. That's not going to cut it anymore.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, and we'll talk more about that later, but you're exactly right. The mindset is different. The way they think, the way they approach life, the way they reference risk is very, very different. So
Good job. You earned your new sticker.
any other thoughts? Anyone?
Andy, this is Keith.
Yeah,
I have a question. I love the numbers and it sounds great. And you can reduce the blue diamond one by 1 because we're going to do that very soon. I'm going to claim that here and now. But what I'm curious about is, and maybe I'm getting ahead of the conversation, but I think about if we're looking at different leaders and different people coming into doTERRA, how are we attracting them? Do you have ideas on how we attract those different leaders? Because what we've done in the past, obviously, has been that one-to-one connection that brings like-minded people, right? And so if we're in that early adopter phase, we're bringing in like-minded early adopters. What's the change that we need to make to bring in those new leaders?
That's a great question, and we're definitely going to go there.
Okay, great.
Yeah, that's the $1 million question, right? So now what? This is great information, but how does it change the way we build our business? So, great question. Okay, well, it sounds like that was the perfect segue. So let's go ahead and talk about, as Lyle used that example, I think you talked about Apple. Maybe not. Okay, so let's think about Apple in this diffusion of innovation. So what do the innovators do when it comes to Apple products? They're the ones who camp out at the store for 4 days to be the very first ones to get the product, right? Let's see if you can make yourself.
Yes. Thank you. But you be the.
So think about those people who they're so passionate about the idea, right? This vision, this why of Apple, that they don't have to know what the feature list is. They don't have to know what the price is. They're standing in line because they believe. And that's what an innovator does. They have, they'll figure out the details later. And they don't need a user manual. They don't need reviews. They don't need stats. They don't have to have the consumer reports. These are the kind of people who said, look, Steve Jobs is the man, and whatever he launches, I'm in line. Sign me up, right? So that's the mindset of an innovator. That's the paradigm that they live in. So now let's take a look at the early adopters. Okay, these people are some of the first customers, but maybe they're not standing in line. Maybe they're buying the iPad a month or a year after it launches. Maybe they've talked to a few people. They've let Apple work out a few of the kinks, and now they're saying, okay, I think this is cool. I don't have all the details, but I'm in, right? I know a guy at the street. He seems like a sharp guy. I'm in, right? Then you look at the early majority, and these are people who, once Apple has reached, 1 million or 10 million users, they're in. They see that this is a really streamlined, mainstream product. This is not a fringe. This is not a crazy. This is not a hippie thing. This is mainstream. This is what is happening. And then the late majority is the people who are kind of getting nudged into Apple, right?
Pushed.
Yeah, this is a push. This is a pull. This is not ooh, I'm going to try Apple. I'm going to try the iPhone because it's the crazy newest thing. No, iPhone's been out for 3 or 4 years, and you're finally seeing, oh, yeah, this makes sense. My iPhone is going to do more and do it better and have less problems and less crashes, and I'm in, right? And then the laggard, as Lyle said, this is the person who would have the flip phone.
But no, they probably still have the 10-pound walkie-talkie.
The walkie-talkie itself. The cellular device.
That's right.
That also does faxing.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where, if we were to use the Apple comparison. So now let's superimpose the doTERRA framework with these different paradigms. So each of you I see as innovators. You were the types who, you jumped in a few years ago. You're not new kids on the block. Each of you has been here for a number of years, and you didn't need doTERRA to be a publicly traded company. You didn't need it to be a $1 billion company. You were in before that. Maybe you saw some other people succeed, and so some of you are maybe in that early majority. Or sorry,
In the early adopter.
Early adopter. Yeah, some of you are early adopters. Maybe you needed to see a few more success stories before you had the belief, but each of you has enough of that kind of Western frontier, rugged individualist. I don't need the manual. I don't need the consumer reports to tell me this is a great thing. You know what I mean? So if our next big opportunity is with the early majority and late majority, then what are some things that you can think of that they would be looking for in order to jump in order to commit, in order to give their time, energy, and resource to creating a doTERRA team? And I'm just going to let you unmute yourselves to talk just so we can keep the audio a little bit cleaner. So what do you think they'd be looking for?
Well, this is Wendy. I like one of the things you said is systems, because we have a new frontline leader who is a CEO right now of AAA and does lead a team, and that's exactly what he's looking for. He wants to streamline it, and he wants proven results to make sure that if A plus B equals C, then let's do it.
Exactly. Yep. These are the people who want the manual, right? They don't want to figure it out. They don't want to learn by failing faster. They want to know, okay, there's a system and it's duplicatable. It's not like the system is not go fall flat on your face. The system is, step 1, step 2, step 3. So absolutely. What else are you guys seeing? What would they be thinking? What would they be looking for? Someone in this early majority, what are they looking for?
I think things already done for them. Like that system already has, all they have to do is plug in information, plug in the things into that system so they don't have to reinvent the wheel all the time.
Yep.
It's already prepared.
Exactly. Yep. Maybe these are people like you mentioned, Wendy, who are seasoned business professionals, and they understand that a business is really just a set of processes. It's just business processes. So the brand represents those processes. And if they have to be the ones to invent those, that's not their thing. That's not what they're interested in. Maybe they've done it already. Maybe they ran their own business for 5-10 years, and they're ready to create something more streamlined, more established. They're not going to be the rugged individualist again. Awesome. Any other observations or thoughts?
Hey, this is Rosie Grummer.
Hi there. How are you?
Good. Hey, I'm thinking that when you're talking about the majority, these are the people that also they have a value attached to having other people see that they're connected to this brand or connected to this movement, or they want to be where the cool kids are, kind of a thing. So there's value, I think, for many of them in that too.
Yeah, they don't necessarily have to be first, but they don't, that early majority, they don't, there is a little bit of a fear factor that they don't want to be left behind either.
Yeah.
So
Totally.
Yeah.
it's kind of that they're weighing the risk of, is it too early versus being left behind? And so how do you help
So
them?
we can leverage some FOMO, right?
Yeah.
Fear of missing out.
Yeah, exactly. So that sense of community becomes really critical, doesn't it? Awesome. Well, all those things I totally agree with. This is, to me, this is a really exciting time for a lot of reasons. You know, doTERRA has proven that they can grow, that the product has broad market appeal, that it's not a cute little boutique type company. It's not a boutique product. It's not designed for the niche, you know, the crazy, the healer, you know, the grandma who wears the frumpy, you know, shawl thing. It's not, that's not who we're after. We're going for broad market appeal, and we've done it. We're $1 billion company. You don't get to $1 billion with a fringe boutique product. So, let me just tell you some of the experiences that we've been having as we've been talking to a new prospect. They've built a multi-million-dollar downline in another company, and one of the things that, I'll rattle off his bullet points of what matters most to him. Number one, he'll only work with a company that's at least 8 years old. You know, somewhere in that 8 to 12 years, he will only jump in and create massive success because he wants to be able to prove that you don't have to be an innovator to be successful. And that's what he did at his existing company. His company has been around for 25 years. He jumped in when they were 15 years old, and he's one of the top 5 distributors in that company. So that's one of his standards. That's kind of his unwritten laws, is you don't have to be at the ground level. You don't have to be grassroots. You don't have to get in early. If the company is legit, then I should be able to jump in. So I think that's a great example of someone in that early majority who will be wildly successful in this next phase. He also said that he absolutely expects a system to be in place. When he joined his company, there was not a system, and so he created one. And he said it became a huge distraction for him. It's not what he loved the most, and so if he's going to do it again, there needs to be a system in place. And you know, like Wendy was saying, that's what they're looking for. You know, they need to know there's a track to run on. This is not going to be trial by error. This is going to be I don't like the word plug and play, but it's basically, you know, rinse, lather, repeat. This is a known system with set expectations of what I need to put in and what I'm going to get out. And that's really the same thing that people expect when they buy a McDonald's franchise. They know exactly what they're going to put in and what they're going to get out. You know, there's no guesswork. There's no rolling the dice. That's why McDonald's has such a high success rate with every store they open. So those are some of the attributes of the people that we're looking for. And more importantly, this is the way we need to change the way we talk to them. So in the past, you know, we could throw oils on people and say, isn't this great? Are you in? and that was enough. We used to be able to say, the owners are incredible people. Trust me, you're going to love this, and they'd be on board. That's changing. That's one of the biggest shifts that we're seeing right now is people are coming with a different set of expectations in order to get them to move. And so we need to change the way we're talking, the way we're engaging them, and even the places that we're finding our prospects. So, Keith, you asked the question, how do I find leaders in this new phase? I'm not going to tell you that the future is on the internet, that you can now launch a Facebook campaign and grab these people, by the dozens. It's still the same way of connecting and engaging. It's still belly to belly. It's still a personal business. The thing that is changing is our approach and the mindset that we need to use in our talk tracks, in our languaging, in the experiences that we give them. So in the past, experience with product might have been the most important thing. When we're attracting leaders now, we need to be thinking about how can I help them create those beliefs in the company and opportunity to get them to move. So, product is always going to be crucial, right? That's never going to change. But what is changing is we can't rely on finding those pioneers and trailblazers who are willing to just grab their oils and go out and start evangelizing. It's not going to be that type of people like it has in the past. I look at most of our top leaders. Laura Jacobs, when she got started, she didn't teach a single class. She got on the phone with her existing network. She didn't share a single sample. She got on the phone and said, I found the essential oil company of my dreams. Are you in or are you out? And she built a gold that way in a weekend. And so she attracted a lot of those like-minded people who were like her, very much an innovator, very much just open and willing to take big risks. And so we need to be changing our mindset to find people who are not as risk tolerant and as pioneering in their thinking.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of an experience I had as a little boy. To your point. So my grandpa, we lived in a small farm town, and he was an avid golfer, and so I don't know, we had a couple hundred acres, and so off the back end of his house, kind of over this big gully where there was a bunch of sagebrush, he built a little driving range so that he could hit golf balls. And one of the ways that I could earn money is I could go out and I could go find the golf balls. And I would go out and, when I first started, I would just go out and, of course, anything that was in the open dirt, I'd pick up really quickly. Well, guess what? With a lot of sagebrush, yeah, I'd find some really quickly, but eventually I'd come back and like, hey, look at this great bucket. And my grandpa's like, yeah, I hit about 10 times that many. They're all in the sagebrush. You got to go look harder. And then I would go in and, all of a sudden you start poking around the sagebrush, and I had to be a little bit more thoughtful. So in terms of identifying leaders, it may mean that we have to get a little bit more creative. We have to get a little bit more targeted in terms of some of the things that we're doing from a finding standpoint. And I think that's, as I look at, say, for example, social media, rather than relying on social media to be the end-all be-all, what I think one of the great benefits of the social media platform as we move forward may be to get us into unique markets, into unique groups or tribes that we maybe could not connect with the same way without that platform beforehand. So whether it's the ability to target into a specific area or to learn about various groups, whether it's on LinkedIn, Facebook, wherever, where we can have some of those conversations, we're going to have to be a little bit more creative, but those people are there. And it's just that, again, we're going to have to look in the sagebrush. We're going to have to look a little bit more carefully. but we're going to find a lot more golf balls in that versus the easy ones that I could almost see from his backyard. I could, oh, there's someone out there in the open. But the leaders are definitely there, and maybe there's even a follow-up conversation of where are we finding different watering pools or individuals. Part of it may be some brainstorming around. And I think one of the things we wanted to do tomorrow was to create a little bit of that profile that I know Kirk Duncan kind of does some work around. Of what is that profile? Maybe they are still a little bit entrepreneurial. I mean, somebody who owns a Jimmy John's franchise is still entrepreneurial. He or she wanted a system to be effective there. So are there some groups that way that may be in that realm where it's a lower cost to franchise, so to speak,
Yep.
lower investment cost, higher return, and the impact on lives? I still think one thing that I don't think you can lose, the laggards, it doesn't necessarily matter as much, but you still need to have a mission and powerful why. We can't lose that in going after the early majority. They still connect with that. And so they just want to see that they can have success, and we can minimize some of the obstacles to their path to success going forward. So Keith, I don't know if that answers your question. Maybe if there's any follow-up thoughts you've had as we've talked, it'd be great to hear from you or anybody else. So.
Yeah, no, I think that definitely answers the question and kind of touches on it. We have to look at what we're doing and how we're doing it. I'm sort of a systems person myself. Like, I was more likely to join my wife in this business because Share Success existed. And when I was able to sit down with the Live, Share, Build guides and kind of look through that, it was like, okay, I know how to transfer this to other people. So for me, that all makes sense, right? And so I like the direction that it's headed. And I think the numbers that you guys talked about support that tremendously. I think it's really exciting stuff.
I mean, so here's, I don't know, I mean, this is just kind of a random thought, and I don't mean to get too political here. That's not the point, but people's premiums, I know mine just went up by 40% for healthcare. And so as you have conversations about healthcare, it's a good time to maybe talk about wellness and are there some better ways to support health that are less expensive. So I've seen plenty of conversations with people who I know are not using oils on Facebook, complaining about healthcare costs. And I've got an opportunity for pennies per drop, to provide some potential solutions to those individuals. So what may seem like on my end, I'm frustrated about it, actually may be one of the entrees into that next group of people, because doTERRA is a little bit more mainstream now. The science is now catching up with kind of known intuitively all along. And so, that just as an example, maybe there's one there. Every time premiums, every time people go to open enrollment, every October, November may be a great time to talk about better ways to be healthy. So.
Yeah. And just think about how helpless people are feeling right now.
Yeah.
People are feeling helpless about their health care. They're feeling helpless about the election. They're feeling like
fewer options.
There are fewer options, and the options suck. So we really do have a perfect storm for us to tell people, take control. Take control of your life. Take control of your health care, your finances. Like, join us. This is a really great opportunity for that.
And we've got a process.
Yep.
If I could add to that point, I guess the question that brings up for me is those same people who want the systems and, like you said, not plug and play necessarily, but want that legitimacy or continuity.
Yeah.
Are the same people that need that science.
Yeah.
So,
Exactly.
Like you touched on, like as that science becomes more and more available, I think that's a really key thing that's going to take it from the early adopter to the early majority is those fears and those question marks that people have.
Yeah.
And we kind of have that perfect storm of the status quo is, I won't say falling apart, but the status quo is becoming more and more difficult to maintain. and we have this other piece. And once the science is more like when the Johns Hopkins stuff comes out, we have that we can really use. I think the bigger question is for those early adopters that are still maybe kind of struggling a little bit with their business. How do they share that information compliantly? How do they do that? Helping them to learn how to do that, I think, is going to be a really important piece.
Yeah, I think your ability to tell your story is at an all-time critical point. We definitely got kicked in the crotch by the FDA, and those who are most able to get up, to stand back up and keep marching forward are going to have the most growth, by far. So, the thing we keep hearing from corporate is please tell your stories. Get back out there. Don't tell them on Facebook Live, but please get in front of people and tell your stories. So I think you're spot on, Keith. Well, let's go ahead and open it up to any other thoughts or questions. What do you think a quantum growth leader is going to look like? What are you going to be looking for now as we enter this new phase?
I have a question, Andy. This is Wendy. I'm sitting here thinking and kind of like forming my thoughts and everything. And I guess my question for you guys, with regards to that question, if I just answer that question with a question, is are you saying that are you guys thinking more leading with the business, or no? That's not necessarily the point. Like making that more appealing as part of the conversation?
I think it's going to become more central
Okay.
as you attract leaders. So in the past, we've had these people, I think of like Sarah Jansen, right? Like she's just kind of this go-getter who she probably, when somebody taught her an oil class, she probably attacked the center and said, hey, is there a business here? What can I do? You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
I think we have to kind of come out of the closet that we are building a business and that anyone can do the same more than ever.
Okay.
So there will still be more Sarah Jansens in the world, but we can't. If we want to grow to the next phase, I think the doTERRA's growth curve is showing that it's time to move into that next phase.
Well, I actually appreciate that, because I think that I've been doing a lot of talking with leaders on my team and then doing my own reflecting about when you said coming out of the closet. I think that I have felt really frustrated because I've attracted what I've attracted up to this point just on being that girl next door, just helping people out with their health concerns. Right. And now I feel like that it's uncomfortable for me, but I feel like I do have to come out of the closet. And so I guess to answer your question, who are you looking for? Then I guess I guess that new leader to me looks like somebody. I'm looking different now. I'm looking for people with skills, where before I think, and this might sound bad, but I think before I was looking for people like me who were just we're just moms, and there's nothing wrong with being that at all.
Sure.
But I think to go forward, if what I'm hearing you guys say is correct, with sort of this new phase that we're entering into of people that we're going to be contacting, then I'm going to be more intentional about looking for people who have existing skill sets then. Yep. Who can see the potential, and then I'm going to step out of the closet, I guess.
And I think it's an invitation to increase our professionalism.
Yeah.
If you think about people who are in that early majority, they're not as willing to be as crazy as maybe we have been, right? they might, the onboarding process might actually feel more like an interview process. And so we might need to step up our level of professionalism to help them feel like, hey, I'm stepping into an established, systematic organization that has proven methods, and it's, in order for me to believe and to take action on that belief, these things need to be in place. I'm not signing up with some crazy hippie who's working out of their VW. And
Right.
I've got nothing against hippies. I've got nothing against VWs. I'm just saying that might be
Perception.
Yeah, it's going to be a perception change.
Okay. Thank you guys very much.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for your questions.
The others.
This is Mickey. The one thing that I've seen is I've really had to go back to education and not bringing up the business lately to people. So mine's kind of different because I've really been going back more to basics and just educating people on how to use the oils again. Because I feel like whenever I started talking more about the business, I actually was running people off instead of bringing people closer. And I really got to the point in the area that I feel like I was not being, like, I'm talking to the early majority now is what I see in my community of where I live. And I was scaring them whenever I was talking to them about the business. Instead of bringing them on board, I was actually like, they want to be a part of the community. They want to be part of the oil users in our town. And so I've been talking more to the people just in our local town where I hadn't been before. I really built my business going outside of our town. And so now it's just coming back into my little town that we live in. And I had to go back into education mode, and that I'm here to educate people, not to build a business with them.
Yeah, Mickey, I think you bring up a good balance point right there. And maybe if I could clarify where Andy was coming from, at least what I think. So we can't ever lose sight of the fact, in terms of the intention that we're here to serve. That's part of the doTERRA culture and that education. And we are a product first company. I love that convention. If you look at it, convention is almost 100% about the product, the value, the research, the impact that we're making around the globe, both from a product standpoint, but from the source to you, right? That whole process. I think what we're talking about in terms of finding that leader is that when we do start to look for someone who we would like to partner with, or that we want to have a business conversation, when that opportunity arises, how are we talking about the business, and where will those leaders come from going forward? So for example, a lady that, she came to a class, I worked with her at a previous company. She's in sales, large enterprise sales. She's been using the product actively for 1.5 years. We had an initial conversation just because I'd love to work with her. She's great. Back when she started using, she's like, no, not the right time. We're back having a conversation again. And what we cover today are the very things that she wants to know. What's the market size? Are there any seats left on the bus? Do you have a system in place, right? As a salesperson, she's used to having a CRM in place. She's used to having things that she can tap into. So we can't ever lose the education piece. I don't think Andy was saying, okay, we start and we lead out with the business opportunity. But as we have an opportunity to have those business conversations, that we're more intentional about who we talk to and realize and who we talk to and how we talk to them. Yeah. Does that help, Mickey? Does that maybe clarify where we were trying to, or what we were talking to? Because you're right, you got to have the product education.
Absolutely.
And people have to feel like you're serving them. That's, I think, one of the culture differentiators that we noticed coming into doTERRA compared to some of the other network marketing companies that we were approached to prior to this, that we said no to. Maybe like the product a little bit, or we didn't like the product at all. So why would we be interested in the business opportunity? So anyway.
I wasn't saying that, but I feel like at points that, like, I just had a lady this last week that I met with to be a leader. And I wanted her to be a leader. And she actually kind of turned me down and said, how about I use?
Yeah, and again, like I said, the lady that I talked to 1.5 years ago who are now...
I was like, oh, my whole...
Yeah, like I said, the lady who I talked to, she's in Cincinnati. A year and a half ago said, no, I'm not really interested. I'm not really comfortable with that. That's not where I am. So, again, 18 months later, you planted the seed, and that person may come back at a future point after they're using the product and loving the product. Maybe, and this is kind of how we came into it. We were heavy active users for 2 years, and eventually we got to the point where it was like, it might be nice if we could pay for our product. And that started, we helped us get over maybe some of the initial business conversations. But yeah, if we're going to get, with anything, we're going to get no's. So anyway, great. Thanks for sharing the experience. It's good. It's a good reminder on the education front. Any other thoughts?
Yes, I have a thought. This is Dr. Hannah.
Hey.
Hi there, and thanks so much for hosting this call. I wanted to answer your question first. What does a quantum growth leader really look like to me? It's someone that can be inspired by the vision, either helping them with a health care goal, but also inspiring them again with that beautiful compensation plan that doTERRA gives us. But I also have a question that I'd like to get help with.
Yeah.
So I'm a diamond right now, pushing for blue, and I have a very busy wellness center myself, and I obviously want to push for the higher ranks, but it does get a little challenging having your own business and wanting to support that business. How do you help support these amazing entrepreneurs that you're attracting that already have established businesses that are pushing for those higher ranks?
That's a great question, right? It's like, how do we live in both worlds where we maybe feel passionate about a couple different things? So, one of the initial things I would say to any entrepreneur that's in that spot is, what is it that's currently on my plate that I don't necessarily need to do and that I could pass on and I could pay somebody else for that particular item? So prior to working for Natalie and Andy, I did leadership consulting, organizational consulting. And one of the first things I did, even before I could afford it, is I farmed out my bookkeeping. Mike, I just don't want to be spending my time with that. I want somebody else taking care of the books. I want tax time to be super easy. I don't want to spend my time there. And there, as a leader, part of it is kind of that personal inventory. What are the things that really only I can do? And then everything else, what else can I outsource? And so the better you get, it's kind of like any CEO, right? Of a company that's growing. At a certain point, they have to start saying no to certain things that that somebody else can maybe do just as well or maybe even better, and just focus on the particular areas where the value that you can bring to that conversation, that relationship, or that piece of the business is something unique that only really you can provide, kind of that conversation and value. So that's probably the first place that I would start, is doing that kind of personal inventory. What am I doing today that maybe somebody else could do better than what I'm doing? And let them do that. Even if it means a little bit of investment on my side, or I take a little bit of step back financially so that I can take major steps forward. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. One quick thing I like to do before everybody hops off. Like I said, we're going to present this tomorrow. Any feedback for us in terms of things that would have been good to have, or just kind of your initial response before we kind of wrap up the call? Would love any feedback that you have to help us be better as we go into tomorrow for the presidential pursuit.
I have a quick question. This is Kyla Fennell.
Hey, Kyla.
And I got a chance to hear the tippy end of this presentation because I actually was talking to an entrepreneur that has a very successful practice. I've been approaching medical clinics.
Right.
And, she asked me, she's like, Kyla, well, okay, I want to hit the ground running. What do I do? And I told her about getting into the practice, et cetera, et cetera. And that wasn't good enough. Like for me, we built organically, and it sounds like this whole talk was kind of about this. We built organically, just putting oils on people, but it almost sounds as if I should set up a meeting with her and the people that she's selected for top line, people that she envisions working with herself and doing and approaching it very differently than I've done in my doTERRA career, just really from the opportunity standpoint. Getting oils on them naturally and telling them about the oils, but it would be like a different approach than what I'm used to. Is this what this call was about, like heading up with the opportunity?
Right. So yeah, as we look at kind of that early majority, so that next layer, so Andy kind of shared his experience with this other leader who is moving over from a major company. And as they looked at what was going on, if you're an entrepreneur and you've built already one successful business, you're going to approach that next business opportunity from a different viewpoint. And you're going to have certain questions. I know I did coming in, okay, I'm asking some of the questions that I've kind of given answers to today. What's the real market opportunity? Was I too late? What's the real potential of the market?
These are all the questions she asked me today. And she was making about $10,000 a month in a company called BodyWise. I guess it's MLM. So she's pretty sharp. Yeah. And I'm thinking most of her people that she's wanting on her front line are pretty sharp too. They're all entrepreneurs. She's kind of listed, a couple are doctors, a couple in different companies. So I think when I present this, when I go do this first time meeting, which is kind of freaking me out, yeah, I'm going to have to present this stuff that you're talking about versus having an oils class.
Yeah. So here's one of the things that Andy and Natalie and I have talked about. In terms of my role with them, and that is as we move to some of these conversations, please feel free to use me. So, Kyla, if there's a little bit like, you want some help or you want to just sit down together with just me and we want to go through this together to prepare for that, I'm more than happy to spend the time to do that. And again, that's part of what I'm trying, what they're using me to help with Andy and Natalie as an extension of what they're doing. So, if there's, you want to, here's the slide that we kind of talked to, right, with the business opportunity. What's the real market? What's doTERRA's opportunity? How many diamond slots are available? How many blue diamond spots are available? What does that real business opportunity look like? I'm very, again, because I put it all together and I've been hip deep, or eyeball deep in this. I'm more than happy to serve and help in whatever way I can to make you, to help you feel like you're in a position to have a great and powerful conversation with that group of leaders.
So generous of you all. Thank you so much. I will definitely take you up on that.
Yeah, so let me know. I don't know if there's a place in the comments that I can give you my email. I haven't used, yeah, with Natalie or Andrea, let me know and I can hop on we can do a separate Zoom call and kind of walk through it and do whatever I can to serve that way.
Thank you, because I know this is going to be coming up as I'm approaching entrepreneurs. They look at things differently.
Yeah, they've got a lot of questions and from a business standpoint, and how can we help them that way? So awesome. Let's see, here we go. All right, here's the chat. Let me just pop in. I'll pop in an email that if you want to get a hold of me, you can do that.
Great, thanks.
All right, any other feedback for the rest who are here before we let you go for today?
I just think the numbers are great. That slide that you've got up right now, I think this is really good. So to me, and I like numbers, just that slide was kind of enough to go, oh, okay, wait a second. That's.
Well, and again, this slide that I'm showing you, this is only getting the early majority. This is just an early majority slide.
That's awesome.
This is not, if we get the late majority, that would be another 8 million that we would add to that. And then the extra diamonds and blue diamonds and presidential diamonds, et cetera. So this is just going after that next pool, that next 8 million.
That's awesome.
Wellness advocates.
Very cool. Thank you guys so much. This has been really good.
You bet. Thanks for joining the call. we'll hopefully talk to you soon.
Okay,
Thank you.
bye-bye.
Bye.
Have a great rest of your day, everybody. Talk to you soon.